Hello everyone. So in this video we're going to now look at reactive forms for the first time, and basically the difference that we've had so far between the current forms that we've built and reactive forms is that reactive forms are more about building forms from a dynamic point of view. Uh, we are going to spend a little bit more time on dynamic forms, but you basically are defining what is in your form from the template. You're not defining what is in your form so much from the UI. Even though when you look at the markup here, you're going to see a lot of the UI HTML still exists. But what can end up happening in the end, if you spend a lot of time working on this, is that you'll have minimal HTML and you'll have most of your form template defined inside of your component. Now, what we've been building so far is what's referred to as templated forms. So we've got ourselves some markup, we've got ourselves a model, and basically we're passing data backwards and forwards between the two, and we can do dual binding and all that other kind of stuff, right? But with reactive forms, what we're going to have is basically everything's encapsulated into an object called ngForm, and if you want to get at the information, you have to get it out of ngForm in order to pass it up to your view model. Right? And that's basically the story. So let's get started on this, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. And if I sound a little tired, guys, I apologise. I'm recording this at 4:08 a.m. in the morning. Woke up and thought, let's get this done. So let's get started on this, okay? So the first thing you need to do in order to have a reactive form is you need to import a new module. So the current module we've been looking at for this particular for forms is the forms module. So if I come down to the players module, we've got forms module here. All right. But now that we're using reactive forms, we need to include the reactive forms module. Still from the same library, so nothing has changed there. So just make sure I make the change down here. And now we're using reactive forms. It's as simple as that. Okay. Next thing we need to do is we need to go down to our form in our HTML markup for the particular registration form. And we need to mark which form is going to be referred to as our form group object. And basically it's a matter of coming up here and typing in form group up here. So there you go, in square brackets form group, like so, equals, and then the name of the form. So we had called it registration form last time, so let's do the same. So this ngForm now goes away, and that's it. That's what not form group, form group, and not the equals inside of here, and save that. Now we need to match this up in the component in the back end. So to do that, we're going to switch over to the component, and we need to import a few things. So we already have an ngForm, but we also need to import a form group. In fact, I don't believe we need ngForm in a minute, but we'll just make sure of that. Form builder. Now the form builder is used to create the form dynamically, the form group itself, and validators. Now validators we're importing because we want to be able to define our validators for each of our inputs dynamically in the backend. So we're not going to be just specifying the messages anymore. We're also going to be specifying the validators for each individual field. So this is the real magic of reactive forms, because we're defining everything in the component rather than in the markup itself. So we're pretty much getting rid of all that declarative programming that is inside of our HTML templates. We're reducing will be somewhat, for this example anyway, we won't be reducing the HTML by much, but we will be reducing the markup. And in the following video, you will see how we can reduce it by even more. Anyway, moving on. So we've got those three fields. And now what we would need to do is we need to specify down here, this registration form object, it now becomes a form group. So this is now referred to as a form group. And you'll see in a minute how that all forms in. We don't need the view child anymore. So we can get rid of that, like so. In fact, I believe I can remove it up here. I could be wrong, but we'll find out in a minute if I'm wrong. What's next? So we're going to come down a little bit. We've got our form errors and our form validation messages. What I'm going to do is, even though they are variables, I tend to think they're a little too high up in the file, just because they are implementing something, and because they're private, I like to put them down the bottom. So I'm going to put that underneath this method here. And also, I saw a private function up here. 2 private functions. I like to have my private functions at the bottom of the file, and I like to have my publicly exposed functions always at the top. And I think that's it. Yep, cool. So the next step we need to take is on init, I believe. First we need to define a form builder. So let's do that. And we're going to do that in the constructor. So inside of here, it's like another service. So we've got private FB equals FB, which is of type form builder. Right. So we're passing an instance of this form builder object that we're going to use to build the form. And now on ng-init, sorry, my bad. I was one step ahead. I'm going to create a new function called this.build form, like that. So this is where we're going to define define how this form is built. Now I'm going to come down and make it a private method. So here I'm going to go private build form, like so. Now what we want to do is, we have that registration form object that we created up the top here, or that we renamed to a form group, right? And now I'm starting to see that I don't actually need ng form anymore, I don't think. So I'm going to remove that. So coming down, I'm now going to go this dot registration form, right, equals, and then we go this dot that FB service that we just imported, and then we go from here, we go group. So we're going to create a function called group, like so, and in here we define what our form is going to look like, right? So we have a set of controls, obviously, for this particular form. So our first control is going to have the name of first name. We've already seen this in our HTML, and it will have a default value. So this is how you specify the default value. We're going to have set default value to blank, right? And then we're going to specify some validators, right? So inside of this array here, so this is the string that represents the default value for the field, and this is going to represent the validators that are on this field. So this is where we use that validators call, and I'm going to say this is required, right? Just like so, like that, right? And for most of the fields, we're going to have them set to required. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to specify for one field. So that's one control. Now, before I go too far and start defining all the others, what you actually need to do now to map this to your HTML markup is you need to grab the name that you specified here for this control. You need to go back to your markup. You look at what's here. Now this name here, we now call form control name, I believe. Form control name, like so. And we ensure that it's the same name as in that dynamic field. And the other thing we remove too, because now we're not binding to a model anymore, is we remove this whole ng model construct. Because now we're not going to have that two-way binding. Everything is bound to this new control. It's inside of this this form, right? This new form object. Now we can ask. You can ask in a moment, how do we get that dual binding behavior? I might mention that in the next video, but for now, this is how we're going to define the new controls, right? Now I'm just going to clarify, confirm that that's the right name. In fact, I need a capital C here, a capital N, like so. My bad. So that's saying I want this input element to map to this dynamic, or this back end first name field, which has a required statement. Now, the other thing that I didn't remove is this required attribute, but you'll also see in the back end that I've specified required. Now, Angular just recommends you keep it. I can't remember off the top of my head why that's the case. In fact, I'm going to put it at the end. I think it's for UI reasons. But for now, they said eventually you won't need it. But for the moment, until they get around a particular bug or issue, I can't remember what it is, you need to have it in there. So, but as long as you have this set and you have this set, you'll have this form, this control now bound to that thing in the back end. And you're going to pretty much do the same for all the rest. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to rename this and remove these, just like so. And I'm going to move these up like so. And I'm just going to pause the video for a minute and update these, and you can do the same. And we'll get back to defining it in the back end in a moment. Okay, and I'm back. So what I've done, you guys should have done the same, is I've gone and I've created the form control attribute on all of these fields, right? And I've got required set there. I've also removed the ng model, so everything now is binding to that form group and the controls within that form group. And the one that I haven't changed at this point is the past injuries. Because if you remember, we used an on-change event to be able to add and remove items from that injury view model. And I think we're probably going to stick with that for now, because we're not really we could be binding to a component, but because we're collating information into one property, I think that it's okay to keep it separate and keep it stuck to the view model. And this is something you can do too. You can actually do both scenarios in some situations. And that's what I'm choosing to do here. Just to make it simpler, because trying to do this against a form is a bit of a mess as well. Because we're not talking about one input to one input. So we're going to leave it as is. If anyone knows, a great way to bind multiple checkboxes into one input in a form group, let me know. But I wasn't able to do it with much success. So for now, I've just kept it bound to the view model that we have in place. And that's fine. It works fine. So let's go back to the component, because we're not done here. So we got to the fact that we've built all these one of the individual controls. Now we need to continue doing it for the rest. And this I will do while on camera, because I feel like it's something that people should see, rather than what I was doing before, where I was just kind of copying and pasting code and changing names of variables, attributes and things like that. Nobody needs to see that over and over and over. So let's go through with our next field, was called last name, which we specify in the form control. And if you did all this right, you should have the same names as specified here. And also I'm going to have validator as .required on that, because we want it to be required. In fact, I don't think, I didn't do that right. Email, the next one, again, we're going to have empty, and then we're going to have required on that. So you get a lot of copy and action here. But the next one you don't. So we've got biography, and this one doesn't have any starting value. And because we don't require any validators, we're just going to leave it like that. And so we're not specifying that we have any required validator or anything like that, because we don't for that particular field. Date of birth is the next one. Now this one's pretty much a copy of all the others, so I'm going to start copying and pasting a little bit here. Save a bit of time, because the rest I believe are required. Yes, they are. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the only thing we need to do here is change the name of the field. So we got date of birth, so DOB. We've got team ID. We've got height in feet. We've got height in inches. We have weight. We have position. I spelled that wrong. 1S. And then password, which is 2 S's. And I'll remove that comma. And that is our dynamic form in place. That's our definition of our form group, which says this is the stuff, or here's the inputs I want to bind to this form group. And if you've set up the form control names correctly and you specified the right form group name, this is what you're going to get, right? You're going to get this information. Now, the other thing we need to do quickly is in our on value change, which is the thing that assesses the messages, we need to get rid of this dot form, because on the old registration form it was an ng form. When we went dot form, it would refer to the form group. Well, now that we've changed it to a form group, we don't need that. And in fact, for example, we don't need this constant form either, because the fact that the registration form is a form, we just really need to refer to this dot registration form down here. And that's it, right? And we still got, the rest of this code is all the same. You know, we're still going through all our controls. We're looking to see if they're dirty or invalid. You know, it's all the same, nothing different here, because we're always tying into the form group of the actual registration form object that was originally here, right? Because you've got to keep in mind with this, with Angular, you have your view model, which is what your ng model binds to, right, which takes the data to and from the controls. But behind the scenes, Angular has its own version of a model of your form, which is the ng form, right? The ng form itself has a form property. That form property is basically the make and markup of all your controls and the states of all your controls, which gives you the overall state of your form. So that's essentially what we're trying to gather here. We're going through all our controls that are inside of our ng form, which is part of the form group, and we're verifying the messages, the state of the controls, so we're determining whether the messages are valid or not, right? And I believe that might be it for this particular discussion. No, not quite. Not quite done yet. So the only other thing I want to show, just to show you that you can still bind it to your model at the end of the whole process, right? Because at the moment, you know, we're not bounding to any model, right? We're bound to this FG form. Oh, we've got an error up here too. So on form changed, I just realized I need to refactor this particular method as well. In fact, I'm not sure if I need to do this anymore. I don't think I need this function anymore, because the form is always dynamically there. It's already set up to handle changes. So my understanding of this is that the only thing we need to do inside of our build form at the bottom here is we actually need to register for this on value changed, just like we did before. So we can come up here, and essentially we can grab that line of code. Oops. We come down here and paste. I believe that's all we need. Let me have a think about this. So this dot registration form dot value changes dot subscribe. Yep, that's, and then just to get this started, we need to just call this dot on value. Oops. So this will be on the first time we want to run it. On value changed. Just to ensure it's called the first time. So it will be called subsequent times, but we want, when the page first loads, we want to verify all the messages, right? Which generally, because we're not checking for dirty, because we haven't done anything, it technically is not really necessary to do it, but if we ever change the code in here, we want it to be applied immediately to the form. So it's better to just try it. And for the most part, it's not a very slow method, so it's okay to try it once. So that's that, and now we can come up here and we can actually remove all of this code here. Just delete it, right? Because we're not going to be checking every view build anymore. We're just going to be using the definition here to check everything. And I think that's all I need to do. Let's give this a run and see if we... Oh, no, the other thing I wanted to add was I wanted to add a submit event to the form. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to show you how it binds. So I'm going to put a submit function here, like so. And then I'm going to go this dot registration form, view model, sorry. So this is the view model we want to bound back to, right? At the end of everything. Like we don't want to go anywhere else. And so because it's very similar in nature, based on what's in the form group, like we have the same properties: first name, last name, email, biography. What we can do is we can apply the view model to the form group. So registration form dot value. You might say, "Oh, how does that work?" Well, what dot value returns is it returns basically any, right? And any is basically a JSON object, so to speak. It's an object, JavaScript object, that has the same schema, so to speak, as your view model, because of the fact that they've got the same property names, right? So that form control name of first name, right, will come out as a property of this any model, which will also end up overriding over the top of the first name inside of your registration view model, right? And just for the finishing touches, I'm going to log out JSON.stringify this dot registration model, just to show you that in fact you can see it's all bound. Okay. Now the last thing I need to do is I need to bind this to the button at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see that this is probably the one and only place where we've still got some logic on the form, but it is what it is. You still need something to stop the button from being clicked. So we're going to come here, not clock, click. Sorry guys, it's 4 AM in the morning, you have to forgive me. Submit, right? And save. If that's not 4 AM in the morning, it's probably 5 AM now. 4:36. So let's give this a run, and hopefully, if I'm not an idiot and I'm not too tired, this should have worked. So let's come back over, and we're going to go to the registration page. We've got no errors from the console, from that console at least. We'll just quickly check this console, and we've got some errors. Okay, so what errors have we got here? Cannot read property invalid of undefined. Okay, so we have a control somewhere that isn't mapping to something else, potentially. I'm just going to pause the video and work out what this is. Sorry guys, just give me a moment. I found the cause of the problem. So when I was using the old ng form, Obviously, we had to use registration form.form.invalid here. But now that we're using the form group directly, this here is no longer needed. So that becomes now registration form.invalid. Right, so that was one of the issues. That was the breaking issue. The other issue I found as a result of debugging this is back in the registration.component.ts, in the form errors object, I actually didn't have a field for password either. So the password error was never going to be populated. I think for you guys, if you're using my tutorial repository, you should be fine with that, because I think I fixed this already as part of the previous tutorial. But for me, I was using some older code, not by much, but a little bit older code, so it's causing an issue of password messages not showing up. But that's something different. So now let's quickly check to see if this is working. So I'm just going to close that. So now I should get the same behavior I was before with, required field validators. So you might say, oh, hey, look, there's not much difference in this, but we know deep down what's changed. We know that we've now built basically a form from our component rather than from the UI. So now if I come in, all this still kind of works. Still got the required for everything. As long as we've bound everything correctly, you should get the right messages. Oops. That I can't do anything about. We still can't bind this at the moment. We got the error there. So this wasn't showing up before. Now if I come in and I do everything correctly, let's say 2006, you're a very young person. You're essentially 10 years old watching this. Whoops. And we'll say you're 4 pounds because you like a stick. And password is blah, we don't care. Now I'm going to open up the console so you can see the console what's going on. I'm going to clear the console. And once I click submit down here, we should see a JSON object. And we do. And we can see here that it has the information that we've stored inside of this form. Obviously, email, we can add email validator to that, and I will show that probably. We might do it in the next video along with building a dynamic form. And we've got a biography, which is empty. We have date of birth, which is in that kind of format. A team ID, everything that's in the form is now being stored into the view model. So if I was to come up here and put in an interpolation for the view model, you would actually see that information down here. Or not down here, up here, sorry, as we bind to it. But as you can see, it's only going to bind to it once I click on submit. And for some pages, that's a great thing because, like I mentioned back in the Teams page, if I clicked on this, remember we were kind of changing the information before we wanted to, and using a reactive form, we could have avoided that. That's one way to avoid it automatically binding. There's other ways. The other way is to not use ng model in a dual manner. So in fact, I might show this very, very quickly for you guys, right? So what you can do is you can come over to, actually no, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I don't want to make mistakes at 4:44 a.m. in the morning. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this was helpful to you guys. We're getting closer to moving on to directives, but I want to continue a little bit more without components. So we'll finish off these forms. Then when I look at the built-in directives for app components that exist in Angular 2, which is only 4 of them, and then we might look at a few other little things. We might integrate services more into our components, and then we'll look at directives, and I think pipes, and then a few other bits and pieces to do with like maybe animating transitions and things like that. And we'll probably focus a little bit more on routing as well, because we've kind of covered routing, but there's more to the routing than what I've shown you. I've just shown you basically, probably about 80% of what you'll use with routing. Maybe more, maybe most people will only use what I've got, in terms of understanding where we are in the address bar versus and setting up routes, that kind of thing. But we never know. I'd rather be complete and get through everything in a complete fashion. So you guys have got options. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.